I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Sands. It's my buddy Gordon Dymowski. It's my buddy Alan Gallant. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to review the movie The Loved One from 1965. Watch this in black and white today, so you guys know.
The only way it comes.
Yep, it is. Never been colorized.
Thank God.
Yeah, really. It's meant
that's what I said when it was over. But anyway.
Okay, so I take it, Jewel,
It's
you
one
did
of
not like
those.
the movie.
I found this movie boring and flat. I'm going to tell you honestly.
not a Terry Southern fan.
It was boring and flat as hell. Dude.
Okay. Let's because this nearly happened to me. We're talking the 1965 Loved One.
Yeah.
Loved
With James Coburn's what is it? A police officer.
Yeah, it has a cavalcade of
Yeah.
cameos in it. It has a ton of stars coming and going in it. Milton Berle and Jonathan Winters playing a dual role, which, I mean, this came out the year after Strangelove. And Terry Southern was also part of the writing crew on Strangelove. And I didn't know that when I first watched the movie that he was part of this. I just watched it without checking out who directed or who wrote or anything else. And I started to see things that reminded me of Strangelove in terms of the satirical content of it. Yeah. Not the topical content, obviously, but the satirical content. And that was quite interesting.
Yes.
I'll tell you what I liked about it. The camera angles were nice. That's where I'll go. But from a story,
Joel, I gotta stop. I gotta stop here. It's your show, but I gotta stop you. You have created a situation where there is always going to be a ceiling on this conversation. I'm not saying this to be amusing. Where it's going to be three people who I think all like something, only getting so far off the ground before it's taken down again. And that's going to be a tough conversation to have. As someone who likes this movie, that's going to be a very difficult conversation to have. And so how do you want this to go?
I mean, whatever you guys want to say about the movie, you guys like it, that's fine. You can like it. I'm not here to change your mind.
No, that would not be possible in this case. But this is the dynamic has very clearly been established right now at the get-go. I mean, do you see what I mean with this?
Well, tell me what you like about it. Start there. Help me understand why you like this movie.
Okay, let
Gordon,
me give.
I'll let you take the kickoff on this.
One of the things I like about this movie is that it is a really pointed look at people trying to, people who are not always honest with themselves or other people. When we meet Roger Morse's character in the beginning, he thinks he's a poet, but all the poetry that he quotes is quotations of other poets. He's not even creating himself. When we see his arc, we see him go through the studio system, which is full of people basically trying to create things out of nothing, turning a cowboy actor into the next a human James Bond.
Yes.
And then you go to the funeral home after the uncle dies, where you meet a man who seems just like very much a repressed guy. And Morse is going through this. He's going from kind of innocent to maybe a little less so by the end of the movie. He meets Amy, who is probably the only person in this movie whose motives are pure.
Sure. Yeah. And Jeanette Palmer.
Right. And this is a movie that Jewel, I'm surprised that you didn't like the whole rocket sequence where baby Paul Williams is shooting a rocket, and then they decide, okay, we're going to use it to shoot pets up. and it's like a delay, and then it blows up in their face. And I think this is the kind of movie where it's one of the problems with satire is that bad satire makes its point obvious, and this isn't a film that is obvious. I think it also doesn't help that sometimes it's it's easy to like see a movie go right over your head. There are people who thought that This Is Spinal Tap was an actual documentary. Spoiler, Jewel, it wasn't.
It's where your antenna happens to be. Basically, your perception antenna has to be used to or familiar with the sorts of things that go on in satire. And if they are, then it becomes apparent. And I think it's much more enjoyable that way. But I first, this is weird. I first saw Paul Williams, who was Paul H. Williams, I think.
Yeah.
It as. And I saw that in the credits, and I went back and I said, "Oh my God, it is him. He looks 12. He's 25. It's unbelievable."
Now, Joel, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer truthfully because you've got 3 people and the rest of the internet watching. Did you actually watch this movie, or did you just read the Wikipedia and said, "I'm out"?
I actually watched the movie.
Good for you.
I paid $3 too much. Right.
Jewel, look, I made this movie available for free.
Yeah. I still have the note. Absolutely. Well, it's also available on other multiple platforms. So, I mean, they're a little bit non-mainstream, but they're there.
Yeah.
And Joel, just if you're looking to have a conversation of film that you don't like, it's usually a bad sign when you automatically dunk on something, because what you're doing is you're not letting people open up. I'm trying to think. Yeah. You're kind of it's kind of like because in some situations it would be seen, and excuse my language, as a real dick move. It's like I'm trying to think of it's like if when we talked about the ninth configuration, and I've told this story before. The first time I tried to watch it, I was like folding socks or something, and I was half paying attention. I couldn't get into it. And I was, I think it was coming on recording, and part of me was like, well, rather than, if I'm going to see this film, I should really watch the film. And I watched the film, and I discovered that, yeah, it's actually pretty good. Had I walked into that review was just kind of half watching it and having it as background. The first is I probably would have I probably said, I didn't care for it. I couldn't get into it. But also prepared me for when one person, I'm not naming names, but one person who was not me gave this beautiful, wonderful speech about how much the film meant to them and the kind of meaning they had. And another person who was not me paused and said, "Hey, Gordon, what pop culture icon could Killer Kane take in a fight?" And I said, "No, Joel, I'm not going to answer that." Because I know you're thinking, oh, ho, ho, ho. But you know what? That's there's a principle that, it's you don't have to like everything, but you have to respect other people's tastes.
No.
And, well, Joel, when you say, oh, it's $3 too much, ha, ha, ha. I mean, you can disagree. Rollerball was another example. I didn't care for the movie. But I didn't and I think it was you and Patrick. I'm not sure if anyone else was there, but I both you and Patrick really enjoyed it, and I'm not going to dunk on it and say, "Oh, you guys liked a piece of crap. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah, Gordon, I didn't know you didn't like that movie.
I didn't care for it. I mean, it didn't work for me, but it wasn't like
I hated it. You had some observations, right, nonetheless.
Yeah, and the reason why it didn't really gel for me is that a lot of the stuff in the movie that it tries to predict, it actually gets predicted. it's like the it's kind of like the. I've got a perfect example that I think would fit. I really don't care for the first 200 and some episodes of Dark Shadows, mostly because it's that first year is a series that's trying to find itself.
It's trying to survive, and it's missing the mark in some respects. Whether you like it or don't, it's
right.
still.
Yeah,
It's
I would put it more as they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we actually do this? Because Dark Shadows in philosophy is a nighttime show. It's not really a soap opera. It's not bad. And you can see where they realize, okay, this will work. But I don't feel the need to dunk on it, nor do I appreciate when people say, well, it's not everything has to appeal to everyone, but you don't have to be nasty about it.
Correct. You can be open about it and still make observations about it. You can say why you didn't like it, what focus it didn't have for you, as long as you're making an honest assessment of it from actually paying attention to the movie.
Two thoughts. One is about the first 200 episodes of Dark Shadows. This is to paraphrase Brian Posehn. I can't say this. I can't say it. And it was very funny. Because Brian Posehn is a very funny man. The other thing that I will say is that we have reached a Dickensian moment. We've reached a Dickensian moment. We really have not had a discussion of the film. We've had a discussion about an approach to discussing the film.
Right.
And so I think it would behoove us to start anew. And Joel, I have just a suggestion. Replace judgment with curiosity. If you do that, if you replace judgment with curiosity, you're gonna be okay. It's because a host's job is to make the guests look good. It really is. If you look at Carson, if you look at that's one of the things that they really do. Not to flatter them, not to be obsequious about it, but to put them in positions where they can be their best. And that then reflects back on the host. It becomes a cyclical thing. And if we are not put on the defensive immediately, you're going to get a better, more engaging, more positive discussion out of it. It doesn't mean you have to change your mind or anything like that. It's how you communicate it.
Well, here's the question for you guys. What did you guys think of the lead actor in this movie?
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Robert Morris was one of Broadway's greatest actors, and he acquitted himself magnificently at the end of his career on Mad Men.
Yes, yeah, he had a long-standing career that lasted well over 50 years. So.
And in the movie, what's great is you actually see his transformation from like well-meaning guy visiting his uncle to guy who's getting the bleep out of Dodge.
Yeah,
because he's dealt with all this. He's been hardened. He has been made cynical. He's been he's kind of seen like how people actually behave in LA, which is even back then was seen as a very cynical town. So he does that great arc. I mean, there's a reason why the movie begins and ends at an airport.
It's a journey. It is a cyclical.
It's
like Rings, whatever George Lucas said.
Portal in and out of the story, for one thing. It's the entree into the experience and the escape route out of it. So it's a full circle kind of device.
And it's an Englishman's revenge.
Yes.
He leaves flying first class.
Yes.
That's something too I noticed about this movie, that his uncle is trying to teach a cowboy actor how to speak British, basically.
Yeah.
And that there's a phone call that happens where I assume, because you don't actually overhear the conversation that takes place, that the person on the other phone perhaps didn't like the idea or something.
Yeah.
And that there's a scene where the one guy who doesn't want to like lose his job, or he gets sent out the door, but there's this phone call that gets made to him, he makes a phone call, and he goes, "You got to do this one thing," and he goes, "It's either take it or leave it." And because the guy's flying around in a helicopter who he's on the phone with.
It's Jonathan Winters, one of his two characters that he plays. Yeah. The owner, he's the reverend that runs this big, huge death industry thing that he's got going.
Yeah, and I assume they fire the uncle. I assume that was the thing he had to do. I don't know. The one thing I'll say is I did not walk away with it. Like when I watched this, when the uncle hangs himself, because he takes the painting he drew, the painting he made, the portrait he made. And the woman's like, "Is that studio property?" No, I'm thinking, didn't you see him walk in with it? But he ends up hanging himself, and I'm thinking, I really didn't get the sense that he was going to kill himself.
Well, here let me maybe flesh it out. The uncle is basically taking pride in these paintings that he does for the backgrounds of scenes. So it's not even that he's not like, in his mind, he is an artist, the same way Robert Morse is a poet.
Yeah.
And in his mind, he's also been working at this studio for 30 years. And so he had done this painting of the guy in like a British writing outfit for the studio. So technically, and when you work for a studio, if you work for hire, your work becomes their property. So if you've been working for 30 years, you've just finished a project that's looking good, and you show up at the office, and this actually happens in real life. You're told, you're not even told, "Hey, you're fired." You're just it's clear that you're not welcome anymore. And it starts with going into your office, but finding somebody else in there.
That's right. Or your name is blacked out on your parking space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just, okay, I'm going to kill myself. It's like he's done all this work, and he's basically shown the door without common courtesy. Of course, for some people, that is a very traumatic thing.
It's also the mechanism by which we discover that this is going to be not only absurd in certain ways, and then the reactions and responses make for satire, but that it's a black comedy as well, that it's dark. And it's the book that it was based on was written as basically a skewering of various societal ills, including capitalism, the death industry, Hollywood, the whole thing. So,
did Jonathan Winters know he was playing two roles in this?
Well, yeah, that's why you would hire them.
Yeah, I think ahead of time he would have known. Yeah, absolutely. Would have been contracted to do it.
How could he not?
Sprung it on him the first day of rehearsal, right? Could have, I suppose, but not likely.
And Jewel, to put it in context, Jonathan Winters was a comedian who heavily influenced Robin Williams. So he knew how to do that. He knew how to do that off the top of your head stuff. And of course,
he just come off doing It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. So he was also considered a reliable film actor.
If American humor had a Mount Rushmore,
he'd be on it.
He would. You could not argue his being on it. Mm-hmm. He was that influential, and he was that giant-hearted and insightful, and just a marvelous human being who had some severe emotional challenges. He
had to check into a facility at least one that I know of. Early career, he had anxiety problems and so on.
One of the last things he did was actually a book of short stories called Winter's Tales. That's beautiful. They are only about a page and a half each.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic.
Cool. I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did love Rod Steiger's performance in this movie.
as usual,
Mr. Joyboy is a giant figure. God.
great. He has absolutely no. Steiger was great in that. In his preparation, he would get anxious and vain and so on. But as soon as he figured it out, he'd let it go. He let it all hang out. And he was another guy that had some mental sensitivities too, and emotional sensitivities that he struggled with throughout his life. But he let it all hang out. He let the instrument do what it wanted to do.
And he seemed delighted at not having to play the Rod Steiger part.
Yes, he was definitely not playing the Rod Steiger part here. He was playing something very different for himself. And I think he probably, as soon as he heard or was offered the role, he probably jumped for joy, because he was also a guy that wanted to experiment with, his boundaries and what he could do with his talent. So
what's interesting here is Rod Steiger and James Coburn are going to be in a Western together called Fistful of Dynamite years later. So
they're all, these guys, a lot of the, Steiger doesn't have a small role. He has a major role in this movie, but a lot of the other characters that you see coming and going, they're all major players. They're all A-listers of one kind or another. Burl was no longer an A-lister in films, but he was an A-lister on television, and several of the other people that you see coming and going. The guy that plays the sort of hick guy who's trying to learn the British was a well-established character actor. He performed in films and television for 50 years.
Are you talking about the guy who plays Dusty Acres?
Yes.
He was a dialect teacher.
Yes, he was actually a brilliant character actor. He was very, very good. Typically, he played certain types of characters, but you saw a flash of his versatility when he actually used the proper British accent for the first couple of sentences before he
things couldn't get a bit dykey.
Yes. So, but he was very recognizable in those times. He was everywhere at that point in time, from the late 50s through the 60s. He was on a ton of television shows. He was on the Beverly Hillbillies, I think. Of course, he would be. He was on the Andy Griffith Show. He was everywhere. So, but yeah, that was his mainline character, was playing that sort of corn-pone guy, But he was.
Did you see Cornelius, Jewel? Did you like Cornelius? Is in the movie.
Cornelius.
What?
Roddy McDowell. Yeah,
Roddy McDowell.
Roddy McDowell.
Okay.
He's the son of the studio head.
Yeah. He has a nice scene. He has a nice scene in there.
The guy who's sitting at the desk?
Yes, the guy who's
Yeah,
sitting at the desk.
Okay, yeah. I've never seen Roddy McDowell without makeup, so I did not know that was him.
He's been in 100 movies.
I've only ever seen the Planet of the Apes movies with Roddy McDowell, so I've never seen him without. So I didn't know that was Roddy McDowell. I apologize.
That guy had a huge resume.
But I did like his performance. How he's got the feet put on the desk. And he's all calm. Then he realized, oh shit, this.
Yeah.
That there was really good.
It's great transitional acting.
Just the oxygen and how the sound of it carries over. I love that.
Dana Andrews is in this too.
Yeah, he shows up later. Yeah. But yeah. That's when I started having like flashbacks to Dr. Strangelove. Was when I saw the military guys show up. I'm going,
Tab Hunter,
Southern. Yeah,
San Antone.
There is a template going on there in terms of satire.
Yeah, you got Tab Hunter. You love Tab Hunter. Tab's in this.
The funeral.
They're really marvelous. Those little reproductions.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting when they had the coffins and they had the half naked women in them. I wasn't expecting that.
The coffin orgy, the coffin room orgy, something that you would figure with that might have happened on another Dark Shadows movie with another director, maybe.
Well,
Bob Gioni.
It made me think of it like something you would have saw out of like the Jerry Springer show or something. But
Yeah, I mean,
no kink shaming here, Joel. And when it comes to funny stuff in a coffin, don't knock it until you tried it.
right.
well, they were
Don't ask me how I know that.
Applies to sexy stuff in a coffin too. So
yeah. How like where did they get did they have to rent the coffins or did they buy them?
I would guess there's probably a prop rental house.
I don't know.
Yes. And by the way, speaking of besides Anjanette Comer, there's also another connection to Dark Shadows, because Anjanette Comer was in Dead of Night, which was Dan Curtis, and it was directed by Layla Swift, and also had a couple of Dark Shadows actors in it. The Darkness at Blasden episode, and but other than that, like almost all of the scenes, interior and exterior scenes around the chapel and that stuff was done at Greystone. It was all done at Greystone.
Collinwood from the 1991 series and the Old House in the 1991 series.
Yes.
And Collinwood yet again in the 2004 pilot.
Yeah, that was in here too. Yeah, I do like the location shots we get. That's cool. What's you guys' favorite scene in this movie?
All of it.
Yeah,
I think it's a perfect movie.
I was really, it's tough for me. I will say that one thing that was delightful to me was seeing Paul Williams, because he actually does a fantastic job. Playing this boy wonder who's blowing up rockets and so on, and that was kind of just delightful to watch that part. But there are many scenes in this movie that I enjoyed thoroughly because of
endlessly quotable dialogue.
Yeah,
the foot kind of curls when Rigmo sets in. Off to baby.
Oh, yes, really. Off to baby. Jeez.
Sadie swallowed it all. Hook, line, and pole.
Let's talk about the fact that this definitely is a macabre comedy.
Oh, yeah.
It is very much.
I mean, this is more Charles Addams than the Addams Family guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm surprised, Joel, that you didn't like it, because there's some really like grisly with a sense of humor scenes. It's funny because this there's a British writer named Eric Sayward, who was script editor for Doctor Who in the 80s, and he saw this movie and he wrote a script that is a very it basically steals a lot from the Whispering Pines sequence, and it's not very good. But I'm not going to dunk on that. But it's why it's. I think it's one of those films that is because it's so black. It's easy to get. It's easy to think like, well, what's so funny about that? Because you're not supposed to laugh. Versus.
But the function of satire is to A, make you laugh, B, make you think.
Right.
And to do the kinds of biting critiques that might get you in trouble at a cocktail party. So.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. When this was filmed in LA, is there a scene that they maybe wanted in this movie that they didn't get in that you know of?
I don't think so. Okay, so some history on this. Dr. Strangelove had been a huge hit. It's Mad World had been a huge hit.
Yes.
So you get the idea of this all-star comedy, except the Loved One's funny, which kind of sets it apart from many of those, which were just big and loud and frenetic. And the director, Natasha Richardson's father, Tony Richardson, had just won Best Picture for Tom Jones the year before. The book had been a huge hit. Terry Southern was a very up-and-coming writer. And the other adapter was an English writer named Christopher Isherwood, who was responsible for my definition of camp that I like to use, which is it's making fun out of something you love, not making fun of something. Christopher Isherwood is also the character that Michael York is playing in Cabaret.
That's right.
So basically, and 20th Century Fox, I think, did they make this movie?
No,
It was MGM. It was MGM. Okay, MGM and the other studios had yet to put it in politely, shit the bed financially. They were right on the verge of it. You were about to have Cleopatra, Dr. Dolittle, all of these things come out that was about to sink the studios. But at this point, it hadn't happened yet. And so what the director of Tom Jones wanted, the director of Tom Jones got.
Yes, absolutely.
Did they had permits to film in L.A., right? I'm asking.
Yes, they had permits to film.
Yeah,
in LA. This is not
It
Ed
wasn't a Larry
Wood.
Cohen film, Joel.
Yeah, it wasn't just like street shots and sort of thing done, in odd hours and so on. Yeah, they would have had to have permits, and also Screen Actors Guild was, make sure you did things safely and correctly and so on. So yeah,
MGM was the biggest studio in the world.
Yeah,
they were the Honda of movie making, and they owned the city. Yeah, they everything was on the up and up, and it has brilliant, soon to be Hollywood Gothic locations.
Yes,
everywhere. It's a tremendous,
The nighttime street scenes are wonderful. They're totally evocative of the era. You see all those storefronts and businesses and so on, and the cars and everything else. It's great. It's wonderful.
Joel, did you ever watch Get Smart?
Yes.
Okay. The main villain of Get Smart, Siegfried, is one of the two guys who is the guru Brahmin.
That's right. And the other one,
he wanted to blank with me.
The other one is the guy that played the chauffeur on Heart to Heart.
Lionel Standard.
Right.
Tell him to marry the other guy.
Actor since the silent era. So he had a tremendously long career. But he reminded me of Charles Bukowski. I mean, he was just rip-ass drunk all the time and coarse, and as Bukowski could be. Although obviously Bukowski was a postal worker, he wasn't working for a newspaper, but or any of that sort of thing. But he just sort of the physicality of him and the way he carried himself. It's just kind of like that. It's kind of fun.
Cool. What do you guys give this scale 1 to 10?
10.
10.
I do a 10. Yeah, I do a 10.
Cool. I have no further questions, guys. If there's anything you'd like to add, you can.
No, I guess the deposition is over.
Yeah. Oh my! I shouldn't be laughing at that. I actually had to do a depo here a couple months ago. So insurance. It went well, so no problem. But this film is evocative of that time that Patrick, you were just talking about. It was the time before the studios started their downhill slide, or even collapse in some cases, at least temporarily. And so these movies with all of these wonderful stars. Now, in a couple more years, you were going to get some turkeys that had all-star casts. You were going to get Skidoo. I don't think you can go much lower than Skidoo, although it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. It's hilarious in its ineptitude. And it does have one great thing in it. It's got Harry Nilsson, and it's Groucho Marx's last film, though. Plays
as God,
a mobster called God. Yep. So yeah, it's but that's an all-star cast movie. I mean, they
you had so many great, horrible all-star cast movies. Myra Breckinridge, Candy, based on a Terry Southern novel.
That was just a couple of years after Skidoo. Was in 1970. I know somebody that was in Myra Breckinridge. He was a bit player in it. Yeah, a guy by the name of Owen Orr.
What do they say about it? about the shoot.
Said it was a cluster. Let's put it that way. And he was also at the time using heavily many substances. So he said it was like going through he knew it was a cluster, even though it was like going through a fog for him.
Yeah.
At the time. But
It's a very difficult movie to watch.
it is. Yeah, it is. You're right. Yeah, I don't find it as deliciously bad as some people do. I like some deliciously bad films, but that one, I think I sat through it once I think it took me 3 settings to get through it all. So
Everybody's a fan of a bad film here or there. So
absolutely.
So I mean,
And some of them have some redemption to them too. I mean, as entertainment, like Skidoo for me has some redemption, just because it's so deliciously bad. Like Leonard Pinth Garnell from Saturday Night Live. That one really bad. It's like bad, horrible, terrible, awful.
well, you guys like this movie. I didn't, but it's all good. Victorian tomorrow night. That's what we're doing. Yeah, okay. So links to Alan Gallant's YouTube channel, links to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows They Book Unbound, link to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box. Go follow Gordon on Twitter at Gordon Dymowski. Go follow Patrick McCray on Twitter at The Real McCray. Alan is on Facebook. You're not on X, are you?
No, I'm not on X.
Okay.
You're not Roland.
I'm not rolling. No.
Right now, I am tripping balls. So
Yeah.
You gotta join. You gotta join the party. You gotta join the party that is X. I mean, why? Why not, right? Anyway, all right, guys. I'll see you tomorrow night. Take care.
good night.
Good night.